Diana DeRosa, and I am speaking with Cassandra Thomas, and she lives in Northamptonshire, England. I love speaking to people that are abroad. It's so cool to think that we can bring this to our people watching the films. And she is the co-writer, director, and producer of the short film Riding Liberty. So this is an intro to what will come, but it really looks like it's going to be a fun story. What has inspired you to do this film and even start with the short film?
Yeah, thank you. Delighted to be interviewed by you. Thank you for having me. So inspiration, I think, having been around horses and specifically polo, I think for a very, very long time since I was a child, and obviously being a filmmaker, it was always sort of in my mind as to how I could bring, the beauty of horses to the screen. And obviously this was my directorial debut, is what production value could I bring? And obviously having 10 horses of my own and having a polo club and a sort of training program, at home with that and the locations, it was sort of a natural thing to try and find a story, centered around polo as the backdrop. But it took me many years to sort of find a story that was going to be meaningful. So obviously polo is kind of known for all its glamour and its parties and all of the external stuff, but what it's not known for, and obviously because we do this at home, is the amount of work that it takes to retrain a horse and to school that horse technically to be ready for polo. And also it's just obviously I absolutely adore horses. They are a massive passion, a massive love of mine, and just knowing that bond and just knowing the characters and how having a relationship with that horse, I think, is important for any sport, but it is very important in polo, and I think that's not what's known. So the story is sort of, it came from it was inspired by a true story, but we did develop it into something obviously different and fictionalized. So the story centers around Sebastian, who's 16, and this is based on a true story. He was mute from an abused upbringing. He lost his mother, and his father was very violent and aggressive with him. So yeah, he became mute and then got sent to work as a groom, having been a very good rider and obviously known for being a very good rider, to help this yard. And at this yard, the polo yard, it's owned by this boy that's the same age as him, and he's the absolute opposite. I mean, he's completely spoiled, has everything on a plate. His father was an Argentine polo player, so he's been pressurized to become this, what his father was, and he doesn't really have a choice. So what's interesting about this film is there's a lot going on emotionally, and there's a lot of layers between each character in the space of 25 minutes. So on the one hand, you've got this, mute, very simple, humble boy that has an absolute natural affinity with animals, in a really beautiful way. He can communicate with them like no other can. And then on the other hand, you've got this sort of, very spoiled, arrogant boy who's had everything, and unfortunately that being so spoiled has not helped him at all. But he actually doesn't have a natural affinity with the horses, however much he tries. And I think he's very bitter about the fact that he's been forced to become a polo player, and he wasn't even asked whether that was something that he wanted to do. So the story is sort of, it centers around those two contrasting characters, but obviously in the middle of it you have this horse called Liberty that arrives, because in England here it's now become very popular to retrain racehorses. So you get them at 3 years old. They obviously went fast enough for racing, so it's perfect because they've got the agility and the speed. As long as they've got the right head, then you can retrain them for polo, and it's brilliant because it gives them another life. I think that otherwise there isn't really a lot that they can do after racing. So ROR is the charity over here that retraining of racehorses is just absolutely wonderful because it does give them a whole life, and for polo they've got a life until they're 21. So Liberty arrives at the yard, and she actually has her own trauma. So her trauma was that she had an accident in a trailer. So of course, when Liberty arrives, she's very distrusting and very nervous. She's got a nervous disposition, and she just particularly doesn't want to be handled. She's been locked up in a stable for, you know, years and years, I suppose, and she gets put out into the paddock, and, you know, freedom, liberty, as you would say, and she has a bit of time off, but slowly this young boy, Sebastian, the mute boy, eventually starts to build a trust with her. And this happens in secret because the boy and the mother think that it's completely unhandleable, and they just, to the point that they say, right, we have to get rid of it, you know, even shoot him, shoot her, or if all I care, really. But obviously this bonding is happening at night when he's not working for them, and slowly and slowly, with, you know, just this is what it shows. It just shows how much work goes into creating, you know, creating a polo pony. And, you know, it's a lot of schooling, it's a lot of building the agility, building the muscles, but it's also about the bond. So and it takes time and patience, and a lot of these horses, that's all they need, is time and patience.
That's for sure. And I did want to ask you also, you know, what are your goals when you actually do the final film that people take away from that?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. What are the goals? I think for me, the fundamental moral of the story is, you know, it's dedication and work ethic, and that is rewarded, really. You know, here you have a story of someone who just works so hard and doesn't give up and is so patient with this horse, and obviously gets the most incredible rewards out of her. Whereas the other boy doesn't even want to spend an hour, just wants a ready-made machine that he can ride. And unfortunately, he will never succeed because he doesn't put the time in. And I am a massive believer of that. I don't like entitlement. I don't like expectation. I love it when someone works so hard for something and then they are rewarded. I think that's really the moral of the story. And it is heartbreaking because you don't know what's going to happen to the horse. You assume that she's going to be sent away, and God forbid what happens to her. But the sort of the rock of the film is this trainer who spots the boy and eventually sort of saves them both, really. So.
And I have to say that the one thing that touched me when I watched the short film was just that connection that you saw between the boy and the horse. And but I want to thank you for joining me today. And if people want to know more, you've given them a great introduction.
Too much, sorry.
How much would you, you know, how would they be able to contact you if they wanted to? And do you have any last words you'd like to say before we sign off?
Oh, thank you. So you can follow us or through our website, which is www.ridingatlibertythemovie.com, or on Facebook. So we are hoping to premiere it at a top tier film festival in February, March. So we'd love to hear from you and keep in touch. And yeah, I hope this touches you, I think, as much as it's touched me actually making it. So thank you.
Well, it was lovely talking to you, Cassandra, and
you.
Thank you for being a part of the EQUUS Film and Arts.
Thank you very much for having me.